Hello and welcome back to the Ground Up Advanced Flight Tutorials. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and what we're going to do today is I've decided to do this a little bit differently. Initially my idea was to do a circuit around the airport and do both the crosswind takeoff, the legs of flying, and then a crosswind landing. But I've decided it might be better to demonstrate, because crosswind takeoffs and crosswind landings and crosswind flyings are so complex. I thought it might be a better idea to show you what happens when things go wrong. So as well as doing a correct takeoff, I'll show you what happens when you don't deflect the rudder enough, when you put too much aileron in, when you don't put enough aileron in, so that way you can understand the best way to balance this aircraft. So we are Echo Golf November X-Ray. Weather conditions are exactly the same as the last couple of videos, which is a 212 at 16 is the wind conditions. So if you don't know what that means, if you go back and look at the last two crosswind videos, the theory videos, you'll see exactly what that means. What I'm going to do is, let me think. What's a good idea? Let me tune in an ADF here. So what's the ADF for this again? Is it 393 or something? Is it 393 or 395? Let me just get that tuned in. I can't exactly recall what it is. Let me actually check that as well, just to double check. So what we're going to do is I think it might be helpful if we have an ADF tuned in. The reason being is that then we can use this instrument here. So if we have an NDB tuned in, we can use the instrument here, this ADF instrument, to track whether we're going in a straight line. I think that might be, yeah, that might be helpful. So let's actually, it's 393 is what I'm looking for. I think that might be very, very helpful for us. Apparently it doesn't work though, so that's not going to be as helpful for us. Well, that's okay. That's okay. So remember very, very quickly to go over what we said on the takeoff procedure. Again, I'm not going to explain this completely. You guys will have to watch the last couple of videos to really understand why we're doing this. All we're going to do here is we're going to be doing a bit of demonstration over and over and over again. So we want to have this turned into the wind, and we're going to have the rudder deflected that way. So it's going to be like that is how we're going to be looking for a takeoff. And we're also going to want to have, obviously the nose gear comes up first, then we're going to want the downwind gear to come up, and then the upwind gear is going to come up last. We do not want that to come up before that gear. So we want this one to be the last gear that comes up. Again, all the explanations are in the previous video. So let's see, is there anything else that's going to be important to cover? I don't think so. So let's actually tune in. Is it 128.22? 225? I think, maybe.
East Midland.
Yep.
Airport
We're just going to get the 80s information just in case something's changed. Okay, it has slightly changed, but that's going to be fine. It's still in the same direction. So it's coming in from there. That's fine. Let's switch that off. And as you can see, ILS runway 27 is in use, so we're set up at runway 27. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is imagine we're going to take off in... Why are my controls do work? Sound's gone. Imagine we're going to take off in the same way as we would take off without any wind. So we're going to take off in a way where there's no crosswind or very, very limited crosswind, and we're going to see what happens. So I've set the flaps up to step 1 or stage 1, which I think is 5 degrees of flaps, and we're going to take off. And now watch what happens. Right, immediately there's going to be a problem, and I'm not going to correct for it. I'm going to just try and take off without correcting for that, which is going to be difficult because naturally you'll want to compensate. So again, we're going to ease up the power as we've been doing in this all the time, but I want you to see what's going on here. Now, I'm not doing anything with the controls. I have not done anything with the controls, but my aircraft is now in that direction for some reason. That's the direction it's gone into. Now, we've taken off, sure, but we were supposed to be on runway 27 and we are now heading 22, which is a little bit, that's a little bit of a problem. Now, what I'm going to try is, I don't know whether this is going to be even possible, but I am going to attempt it. I want to land this aircraft again very, very quickly. If I can manage this, it's going to be quite something. If I manage to do this, it's definitely going to be something. Especially, I'm keeping the speed low and the altitude low on purpose to ensure that I can bring myself back onto that runway and get the aircraft stopped. Now you can probably already see which way the aircraft is wanting to fly. I might cut all this out though. This might all end up cut out in favour of just restarting, depending on what happens. Oh, the ADF needle's working now. Brilliant. It's just what I needed. There's the runway. We'll sort this out. This is going to be a problem for sure. This isn't how you land an aircraft, by the way. This is actually a very rough way of landing an aircraft. But, you know, it works. It certainly works. Alright, and we're stopped on the runway again. Back where we started. A little bit rough, but we did stop back where we started on the runway, which is great. So we've done one very quick landing. That was also not the best procedure on landing, but it was just so I can demonstrate something else. What I did there was the procedures for a crosswind landing, but obviously in a much more hasty, unprofessional manner. We would have a much longer approach, much longer final. But you saw I managed to land again in the middle on the center line of the runway. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try the same sort of takeoff now, but I'm going to start with the ailerons all the way in, and then I'm going to keep the ailerons all the way in, and I'm not going to do anything with the rudder. Now I want you to see what happens when we do this. So we're not using the rudder, but we're just using the ailerons, and we're going to keep them in, which is the incorrect method. We need to, obviously, as we pick up speed, we're going to have to bring the ailerons out. But what happens if we keep them in? And at this point, I might not even take off. I might just loop back around, back onto the runway. So, ailerons are now in. Watch what happens. So, again, you can see, if you look down here, there's the rudder. No use of the rudder here. The rudders are absolutely fine. So, time to take off once again. Put the power down. So, the flaps are already still in the same position. And this time, it looks like we're starting off a lot straighter. But very, very quickly, you can see, again, the exact same thing happens. So we've ended up with the same issue. You can see that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to hit the brakes. And I'm going to swing ourselves back this way. And we're going to do a bit of a taxi over to the runway. Now you'll notice while I'm taxiing, I've actually got the ailerons in the completely opposite direction. And I'll show you why. Because if I don't, Look which way the aircraft's going. You see how wobbly and unstable this aircraft becomes. So I'm going to keep the ailerons deflected into the wind here. And we're just going to turn off on whiskey and then back onto the taxiway. Sorry, onto the runway. Again, keeping those ailerons deflected into the wind. I know where the wind's coming from, so I'm keeping it constantly deflected into the wind to ensure that this aircraft remains straight. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do the same thing. As I move back on the rudder, on the ailerons, I'm going to use the rudder. That's what I'm going to be doing this time. Now what's going to happen here, there we go, we'll stop right there again. Now what's going to happen here is by using too much rudder, we're going to veer off in that direction. So that's something we need to be concerned about. You can actually see the windsock over there blowing in a specific direction. So watch what will happen over here. Now what I'm also going to do is that, no, actually we don't need that. I was going to say I'm going to tune in an ILS, but we don't need to tune in the ILS here because we are just doing absolute simple takeoff practice. So here we go. So again, I'm going to do the same thing as we were doing before. That's ailerons fully in, but this time as we pick up speed, I'm going to bring the ailerons back. However, as we pick up speed, I am also going to, if we go back out here, I'm going to start applying the rudder that way again, as you're supposed to, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to over apply the rudder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at the lower speed, I'm going to end up going full rudder. This is again an incorrect method, and you'll see what will happen to the aircraft. So we've started off like that, that's fine, and we've done full rudder now. So what's going to happen immediately? Now you can probably guess this. There goes the aircraft. That's gone completely wrong. So let's bring the aircraft back into its correct position. So the rudder has to be applied very, very gently. It has to be applied very slowly as we take off. Now we're going to try a proper takeoff method. We've done a good 10 minutes, 13 minutes of showing how not to do this. What we're going to do is now we're going to try a correct takeoff method. Again, just to quickly go over the procedures for this. We want that gear to come up first, then that gear, then that gear, and then once we're in the air we need to crab to maintain runway heading. So by that I mean we're going to be flying in one direction with the aircraft going in another direction. The heading that we're looking for, the heading correction we're looking for at about 90 knots is about 4.5 to 5 degrees. So we're looking for maybe 266 or thereabouts is the heading that we want to be flying, so that we can track 270. Again, if you don't understand how this works and how I've come up with these numbers, please go ahead and watch episodes or lessons 9 and 10. I think it was 9 and 10. Yeah, I think it was 9 and 10. Do go watch those, all about crosswinds. It will explain everything that I'm doing here and why I'm doing exactly what I'm doing in complete detail. I talk about airflow, I talk about the way the rudder works, the way the ailerons work, what happens, how this happens, and it will explain everything in far more depth than I'm doing here. This is much more of a demonstration lesson. So here we go. Again, ailerons full. This time I'm not going to be on the rudder quite at the start. You can see I initially am not on that rudder. So now we're going to take off. So again, we put the power up. There we go. And as the aircraft starts turning, which is about to, I start feeding rudder in. There we go. And start easing up very gently. And you can see it's still not easy. And at this point, I can take the aircraft off. And you can see that I am flying runway heading. Now if I just lower the nose down so you can see the runway still, you can see I am still flying runway heading, but look at where the nose is as opposed to where the actual runway direction is. Did you see that? Hopefully you guys saw that. And you can see now that as we pick up speed, we can correct this even more. So now I'm just going to do a circuit of the airport, and just what I want you to do, I'm not going to be explaining this one, but I'm going to keep it at a fairly low altitude as well. I'm just going to go up to 1,000 feet. I want you to be keeping an eye on my controls over here. And what I'm going to do is, I can't show you my rudder pedals, unfortunately. I'll explain a little bit about what's going on with the rudder, but I want you to keep an eye on the compass card or the heading indicator, and I want you to keep an eye on the way the controls are and the orientation of the aircraft. So let's get this aircraft banked around now. And you can see that the speed of the aircraft is jumping around, the vertical speed is jumping around in the turbulent air. As obviously with the instruments, I explained in lesson 1 how these instruments work. So some of these readings will not be accurate, and you need to be aware of that. And there's a bunch of readings that won't be accurate, and there will be a bunch of things that will still not be accurate. For example, you're going to see that airspeed indicator is jumping around. You'll see that my heading bug might jump around a little bit, but more so it's the airspeed indicator that we're looking at that will be jumping around more than anything. And you can see here that remember the headings I want to be flying, or the tracks I want to be flying. The tracks I want to be flying is 270, 180, 090, 360, so that's 0 again, and then 270 once again. Now compare those tracks to where I actually end up flying the aircraft. That's what I want you to do. I want you to compare the tracks to where I end up flying the aircraft. Also, you're going to notice something else is whilst I'm flying this aircraft, you'll notice that the shallower turns are still causing the vertical speed to drop. This is because of the turbulent air and the way the airflow is going, as well as the fact that the instruments aren't responding as well as they should be. Right. For this one, I need to be flying in this direction. Go. Right, so we're around 1,000 feet. That's fine. I'm leaving my flaps out. If you guys saw that come up, sorry. Hopefully you didn't see that come up. If you didn't, you won't know what I'm talking about. There's a little sign that came up saying your monitor will switch off in a few moments. I'm assuming that would not come up on your screen. Even though, you know what, my flaps are in. I was going to say my flaps are not out, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to pick up this amount of speed. But just notice, just watch the direction my aircraft, the bearing of the aircraft is, or sorry, the heading of the aircraft is. It's not 090. Again, I will be explaining this in more detail in the next lesson, particularly with landings, but I have also explained this in the previous lessons, which is why I've decided to fly here, because it shouldn't be too difficult to understand at this particular point in time why I'm flying with this specific heading. But the landing is going to be, because I have only explained the theory, and we'll do one landing. I did one just earlier towards the start of the video when we did the first mistaken takeoff, but we're going to do one landing, and I'm going to try and use the wing low method. In fact, I don't know, I might try and use the crab. I'm thinking wing low. Again, if you don't understand this too much, the next lesson will be all about landing in crosswinds. There's going to be a lot more depth to that lesson. We'll do various different ways of landing an aircraft. So I just want to keep this lesson fairly short. Alright, let's slow this aircraft down now. Let's get this aircraft slowed down. Let's get that nose up again. There we go. Again, I'm going to give it a bit of an extended final. This is a good idea to give it an extended final, and you know, maybe this will be good enough to show a landing. I don't know. If it is, then maybe the next episode won't be about landings, but we'll see. We'll see. So what we're doing here is I'm going to be dipping the wing down. I'm going to be dipping the left wing down, so the upwind wing down into the wind, and then I'm going to be using the rudder to keep ourselves lined up with the runway. But for this, first of all, I've slowed the aircraft down, as you can see. Secondly, I've given myself a massive final. And the reason I've given myself a massive final on this is to help us out. I'm going to lower one stage of flaps at this point in time. And once we line up on final, I'm also going to drop the landing gear. Right, so let's get ourselves lined up on final as best as we can. As you can see, the aircraft is not easy to fly at all. As a matter of fact, I'll lower the landing gear now, and then we can give some extra power into the aircraft, which is a good idea. Again, look at where I'm flying compared to what my heading is meant to be. For flying 0, I was not flying 0. Or 360, I was still not flying 360. Right. Where is the runway? I need to be able to see it. Oh, not where I want it to be. That's a problem. I should have switched on the ILS, but I didn't, because I didn't realize... I didn't think I was going to be doing this. Right, so what I'm going to do now is... This might be a good way to demonstrate, actually. I'm going to try and keep this at the stable speed. We've got the flaps out. I'm just going to land with one stage of flaps. I'm going to turn it like this. Now watch what happens. So you'll notice that it's very difficult for me to be flying in the direction I'm flying, because I'm literally flying directly into the wind, almost directly into the wind here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up with the runway, like so. There we go. Alright, now with myself lined up with the runway, I'm going to put my wing down like this. As you can see, so it's like I'm crabbing. So at this moment in time, actually, I am crabbing. But now I'm going to turn my rudder. This is difficult. There we go. Okay. There we go. So we are now lining up with the runway. Do you see what I'm doing? I won't lie, this is not easy at all. So we are now straight aligned with the runway. Or at least trying to be, with the wing dipped down and the rudder keeping the nose pointing towards the runway. This is kind of what I did. This is very similar to what I did the first time around. Right, at this point in time, I need to get this aircraft. See, we've lost the track, so I'm going to let the aircraft get back to where it needs to. There we go. We're being pushed back on. But always keeping that nose as center as we can. Right, let's get this aircraft slowed down all the way now. Just keeping it center. See, that wing is down. Keeping it center. And now at this point, we know what we want to do. Ooh. That's no good. Right, we're not going to be able to manage that, so we're going to do a go around. That didn't work, so we're going to go around. Again, method for go around. Gear up. Get ourselves back on the runway heading. Let's bring the flaps in here. And there we go. We're back on the runway heading, and we're back to where we need to be going. So we're going to go around now. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm actually going to cut this go around short by actually cutting across now. Just for the sake of this video. For you guys to do a proper go around, I want you to literally go past the runway, turn back, and then land and do a full circuit again, not a half circuit like I'm doing. I'm only doing this for the sake of the video. Go. Again, turning back in to the wind. Get myself up to 1,000 feet once again. And we're going to try it again. It's just a matter of practice. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's try and get that nose down a little bit. And we're almost at 1,000 feet, which is all we're doing today. Flaps are fully in, and we're at 1,000 feet. We will trim that aircraft to try and hold that as best as we can. At this point, because now I know that I'm actually adding it in this video, I'm going to tune in, what is it? 109.35, isn't it? There we go. I'm actually going to tune in 109.35 at this point in time. Alright, let's turn back. So let's try again. Again, it's just a matter of getting it wrong, trying again. Getting it wrong, trying again. It's not easy. It's not easy. That is the second time I've ever tried a wing low landing. Like I said, I think I mentioned this in the other videos, I'm used to flying heavier aircraft, jet aircraft, in crosswinds, not these light aircraft in crosswinds. And I'm also used to the crab method. So what we're going to do is maybe I'll try the crab method this time. So the crab method, you saw the wing low method, and you saw what happened there at the end. It just didn't line up. It didn't line up exactly as I wanted it to, which is fine. You know, it's just something. It's just a bit of practice. And the reason I am not showing you guys just a perfect landing is because I want to show you that even though I've been flying in simulators for quite a while, I still find it difficult to do it myself. And you know, it doesn't always go right, and this happens to real world pilots as well. It's not always going to go right. You know, it's not always a perfect situation. You don't end up with a perfect situation. Right, so we're just going to fly again in this direction for a while, and then turn around and attempt that landing all over again. Again, I'm going to go past the glide slope so that we have a chance to sort ourselves out and get ourselves what we call established. So we want to establish ourselves. So I'm just going to let it go past quite a fair amount. It looks like this is about a good time as any to turn in to try again. So here we go again. So again, we're bringing the aircraft in, compensating for the wind, and I'll decide whether I'm going to do a wing low or crab method. I think because this is a small aircraft, the wing low method really is the better method. The crab method is going to be difficult when it comes to touchdown. Even though the wing low method, as you saw, is difficult, it's easier than the crab method. So yeah, I think the wing low method is going to be the one to do. Right, let's get that gear out again, and one stage of flaps out once again. Get that aircraft ready to slow down. Ooh, turbulence. Have a look out the window so we know where we are. We're there. We're a lot closer this time. This is where VR would also come in really handy. VR would be incredibly handy here, as I could just look out the window very quickly to see where we are. I think my best bet here is to start turning in right about now. think that's my best bet. Try and keep that nose up as best as I can. Bring it in. And we are, yep, we are pretty much lined up here. Okay, so let's get that ready to go. We are low again, but that's okay. We're not terribly low. Because as you can see, that light is going between white and red. But now we can do this. So I'm actually going to attempt myself. I'm going to attempt the wing low method once again. This is the crab method I'm doing at the moment. That's not what I want. There we go. Now we're getting ourselves lined up once again to compensate. There we are. Right, let's get this nose coming down. Let's get that wing down. And let's see if we can land it this time. It doesn't matter if your landing's a little bit rough the first time, the second time, the third time. Just let yourself learn. Let yourself learn. That's the important part. I must say it's taking a lot of rudder here to do this. A lot more rudder than I thought it would. I mean, the winds here are pretty strong. A lot stronger than perhaps you would normally imagine them to be. But we are getting the aircraft down. And as we land, remember, we want to fully deflect into the wind. The ailerons are going to fully deflect very slowly. But here we go. Here we go. Nice and gently ease up on the power. Look at that. We're keeping one wing low, but keeping the nose of the aircraft pointed towards the center line. That one's going to come down first. One down. There's one. There's two. Rudder. Ailerons fully into the wind. There we go. And there's a wing low landing. And we can ease off the rudder very slowly. Fully into the wind. There we go. Deflecting. And we are good. And we're actually going to take this taxiway off. So I'm going to let the aircraft turn itself onto this taxiway. But you can see, the first time I did it, didn't exactly work. Second time I did it, it worked a lot better. So it's all about practice here. So hopefully you guys have got a handle on how to do this. Combined with the last two episodes, do watch both of those lessons. And then this one, and you'll get a good handle on how these crosswinds work. I myself am going to get a lot of practice now on the wing low method. Like I said, I think that's my second time I've done a wing low landing, so I think that wasn't bad for my second time. And if I can do that on my second time and get it fairly well done, I'm fairly certain that you guys can do the same. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos on the ground up advanced flight tutorials. Leave a comment in the comments box below. If you're watching this on Twitch, thumbs up and follow please, and do support me on Patreon. Link to that is in the description box below. Your support would be massively appreciated. For those people who are supporting me and have been supporting me because of these or any other videos I make, I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Next lesson, we're going to be doing a bit more on crosswinds, but we're actually now going to be looking at flying with both the ADF. As I mentioned, we were possibly going to look at that, but using the ADF and possibly VORs as well to understand what track we need to be flying in or out towards a VOR and following a specific radial. So we're going to be looking at that, and with that we might be using the autopilot systems as well a little bit more. So that's the next few lessons. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in them very soon.